So far, no members of the public present.
How is he?
I said thank God for coming.
Oh, right.
Well, I mean,
He
he's
was
one of
us.
And more particularly, no PC Darren Maker, who indicated he would attend.
Constabulary duties.
He will be, hopefully, at...
He can't get through, it's not good.
No, that's right, yeah.
Yes.
Yes,
Through
well,
coffee morning, he
yeah.
has said on his sheet that goes round that he will be at the coffee morning.
Okay. More attractive venue, obviously, than this. Cakes and coffee. Yeah. Fine. We're now in session and being recorded. Any apologies? No.
Johnny Shelter
Oh,
has another important meeting, apparently.
okay.
Yeah, what could be more important than this? Even.
No declarations of interests at all? No? And no applications, members seeking a dispensation. And as I said at the start, this meeting is being recorded for publication. So, we're now in public session. Are you anything you want to say, or are you here to listen as much as?
No, just crack on.
Say? Okay, thank you very much. Item 3, to confirm the minutes of the last meeting held on the 10th of June, chaired by Alan. They've been circulated. Is everyone happy with those who were present with the content? Thank you very much.
Nothing to add.
Yeah, I'm sure the bottom. Thank you. Yes.
Informal.
No, sorry. And
Eight.
wonderful. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Matters arising, Sports Club lease update. The information I have from Mervyn, who apparently has been given the authority to negotiate on behalf of the Sports Club with John Mallet and Willie, is that he is waiting a response to a letter that he has sent to them. I've, on my own account, emailed Willie to say, this is what I've been told. What have you got to say about this? And I've not yet had a response, so I've chased him up. But as far as we know, things are proceeding, but at a slow rate. Land fronting St John the Baptist Church. Further to previous research and contact with the archives at Lewis. At Hove now, okay. Hove. Aren't we going to Lewis?
No, we're going to have
We're going to Hove.
It was always home.
It wasn't Hove, actually.
Is it? Yes.
It was never Lewis, it was always Hove.
It was always Hove, okay. Well, it's a charming place, I believe.
Lewis may be more attractive than Priest.
No, I think Hove is more attractive. Anyway, Yvonne and I are going to have a half day out. They're going to see what we further can dig up. And after that, I think we come to some conclusion as to whether or not we can pursue the ownership further. That's going to happen on the 30th of July. The Ashford Borough Council Caretaker Scheme update. We've now reached a stage whereby we feel that there is no way that we can continue the current arrangement. Ashford, having given us no increase for so many years, have now decided what they are prepared to provide us with, and it's less. You've got a bit of paper in front of you, I think. It's actually less than they're currently contributing. And looking historically, it's not much over half of what they will what they should be contributing if the sums had been indexed over the period of the contract. So I don't think there's any way we're going to meet with them and come to a new arrangement with them based on the current one. So the suggestion is that we should take matters into our own hands to a certain extent, and working from our own budget, we will go to talk to the 3 other villages involved in the caretaker scheme, and we will be able, with Alf's help, to quote them a figure to carry on grounds maintenance within their villages to the standard currently set, which is a higher one than Ashford are prepared to offer. It then becomes a question of whether or not they wish to continue at the current level of service, or to say no, then to employ either Ashford's direct services, who will just give them a grass and hedge cut arrangement, no doubt at a competitive rate, but they certainly won't get the bells and whistles that they currently receive through the caretaker scheme. But one way or another, matters have to be resolved before, for instance, the various villages go out for their own, decide on their own precepts for next year, because there may be an element of extra cost that they will face, and they may therefore have to increase their precept to cover that.
Did they reply to Yvonne's inquiry about the areas that they didn't put on their list of things that they were responsible for?
Yes, in as much as stone they missed, but apparently they had included the hedges, although they didn't state they had. They said they had included them. And it was Poplar Farm Field, was the one that they had completely missed and said it wasn't within their remit. It's still a bit odd, but they have given us a figure. They still want to look into it. It's all to do with the lease that we had. But they have given us a figure. If they were to cut it, they have given us a figure, which you'll find.
Well, who would cut it if they didn't?
Well, we have.
Yes, I know, but I mean, they would say, could they possibly say it's our responsibility, not theirs?
Oh no, I mean, they might say it, but they can't, because
They can't,
I would
can
find
they?
that. No,
Yeah, because
I have told them,
we've got documentary proof.
and I'm still asking them who they think has done it, because we've done it for the last 13 years. Who do they think's been doing it?
And they presumably still got their finger in their mouth trying to pick up a suitable answer. Yeah.
But I have had correspondence from the estate manager now at Ashford, and he would like to meet me to discuss that field.
Do you need any moral support for this meeting? Do you need the heavy?
Oh, I can always have up there.
When I'm sure John or others would come along and support you.
We expressed our views jointly, I think, about the gentleman who his
threatening in the background, Come on.
I have sent an email to him.
She's sent quite a fierce email to him. It's clear he doesn't really understand things, and in a way it's pointless him coming out, particularly when we are at the stage we are, which basically means, and what we're trying to do is put right a historic wrong that is actually costing Wittersham, because when we come to the budget, you'll see we're budgeting already a £10,000 loss, and that will increase because Ashford are actually decreasing the sum that they're prepared to give. So we've got to find a solution to this, and we think we know a way forward. We're working with Alf, the practical man, on this, and very helpfully he has indicated that were we to lose perhaps one or two of the villages, which we might well do, he would not mind reducing his hours pro rata, so to speak, so we could manage, if you like, the contract in that manner. But we need to get on with this, and so we will be working on it in the near future and keep councillors informed. But what we're aiming to do tonight is to ask for your approval of this way forward.
If we've got questions on these spreadsheets, you want us to ask that later, when it comes up under finance, yeah? Or
No, that's what you've got now, that's the
No,
scheme, so that
okay.
you can, apart from the budget obviously, because the budget will come
The budget will
later.
come later.
But that's just so that you can see what we're,
Mm.
I put the budget figure in, sheet in, so that you can see what we're talking about with the money coming in and the money that will be going out.
Yeah.
So
Right,
Necessarily anything.
I think it's the budget figure that I'm,
Okay, we'll come to that.
right.
But my impression is that they don't actually want a solution, and they, one arm is telling them you've got to find cost-cutting routes with the new administration, and he's probably got his both hands tied behind his back, and he cannot
I don't
cannot
know.
afford the solution we're trying to give him.
I don't think they know, because this
Mm.
chap has been asking, do you have a contract or anything? Well, they gave us a contract which we've been renewing almost annually. Do you have any maps that I can see? Well, they gave us the maps in the first place.
You sent them back
So-
to them.
Not yet, no.
That might be a reasonable thing to do.
Oh, he's already had the one that he was questioning, the Poplar Farm Field one, because that's when they said about, it's not our responsibility, that one. I said, well, look, this is a request from Ashford.
Just
So
say, well,
they've seen it all.
I'm very happy to supply you with your map.
Oh, yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Well, I just think, Alan, that we're really wasting our own time as well as theirs.
Yeah.
This is a sort of higher up the ladder, but you then move out of operations into admin and know very little actually about the sort of practical side of things.
Yeah.
So if Yvonne is happy to receive him here, that's fine, but it's not going to change the way forward as we see it.
Yep.
And any time wasted in looking out maps and getting them to us, they must be in their contract file. They should be able to lay their hands on them without a problem. Do you have a spare pen or pencil at all?
I do.
Or just one that we can put between us? Thanks.
Without stating the obvious, I'm assuming that this is very much Isle of Oxley, so I'm assuming that Johnny's
Oh, yes, he did.
on board. Thank you.
No choice.
Thank you so much. So, can I take it then that the councillors are agreeable to us to progress things in that manner?
Please.
Thank you very much.
Can I just mention something to put your mind at rest on one thing you said, John? You said it's an ancient problem. In one way it is. We never had a rise each year, and so it's accrued.
Sure.
But the reason we never went looking for a rise was because, in fact, we had been doing very well, and we had quite a big financial buffer. And they, right at the beginning, used to ask for our accounts, but not later. So the point was that if we asked for a rise, we were just as likely to precipitate a cut.
Sure.
What then happened was that firstly life caught up with us eventually, as it was bound to, especially with the inflation which pushed our pay up a bit. But secondly we had the issue of the national insurance that caught us quite heavily, and those two came at about the same time. So from being actually quite comfortable with the scheme and having cash in the bank, we suddenly went not only the lines crossing in terms of income and expenditure going the wrong way, but went heavily the wrong way just as our cash was coming down towards a position that we could justify. And that's about the time you came along.
Okay, thank you for that. Village Hall Management Committee representative update. Yvonne wrote to the committee and has received a response that she circulated, I believe, from Sam. But in an attempt, if you like, to improve relations, not that they're that bad, I actually contacted Mike Apps, the chairman of the hall, to say that I'd just like to be a little bit better informed about what goes on as a newcomer. And he perfectly politely suggested that I came to their next meeting, which I shall certainly do if the diary permits. I don't know when it is, he didn't tell me the date. But as an alternative, he said he'd be very happy to have a glass of beer at the sports club and just chat about things. It's clear from the contact that we have had so far that they're happy within themselves with the way things are running at the moment, and the fact that we have an issue with appointing someone to that committee while they have unlimited liability, he doesn't really see as an issue at all. And having met him, I'm comfortable with the fact that things are running well. Obviously, I know Sam. I know the work she does. I think she does a lot of work, and I'm not sure whether she's still going to remain on that committee. But I just think if we've got a reasonable working relationship, then any potential issues can be overcome, which hopefully they will be.
Just a small point of information. I know one of the things that they mentioned, I think in the past, is they were about the cost of becoming a CIO. There's no cost at all from the Charity Commission. Any costs are those that you incur on legal matters. Right. So if you can get a lawyer to operate at a reasonable rate, or you've got someone in-house or someone it's not that complicated. It's not a big legal cost typically. Sometimes it's quoted for bigger charities up to about £1,000 is the sort of the benchmark. But there's nothing from the Charity Commission. So
right. You're very well informed on those matters. I mean, it may well be that we might consider, if we felt it was not too great a sum and it was justified, and we are, after all, we're the ultimate responsible parties, aren't we, for this, that we could encourage them in the direction of the CIO and contribute to such legal costs as they might incur.
And that's a good suggestion, because they've got to have at least 3 trustees for a CIO to work, and I think that's all they've got at the moment. So if they lose one, they're stuck, and I don't know what that then reverts back to us. And if they all went, we've got a village hall committee that isn't able to operate, and again, I think that might revert back to us potentially. So I think John's suggestions is really worth looking at.
Is the way forward for now then just to perhaps be copied into the minutes, so at least we do know what's going on?
Yeah, I certainly make that suggestion.
You did ask, and that was sort of
wasn't
ignored.
I don't think they have many meetings.
Or minutes.
Yes.
I did, just for information, I did email the lady who runs Kent Acre now, just to say how, I haven't had a reply yet, how is she getting on with her aim last time we spoke, which was to get a sort of locum village hall advisor, because their Kent village hall advisor that Paul used to know has gone to work for Sussex instead. So that might come into place, which would then help them, assuming they join the new membership scheme, which is any time, as we will, I hope. The advisor can help them, but also they have been talking about, and I think it's a national level problem, not just Kent, getting a template scheme together so that they say, here is when it comes to applying for a CIO, here is one we did earlier. In this question, that's what you say. This question, that's what you say. That's what you say. And then the transfer of the title is, as I understand it, and I don't really very well, not a problem, because we have the title, but we don't have any beneficial ownership. So it's not worth anything to us. So we're not transferring value. There's, when you get into what do you call it, stamp duty, land tax, there's no tax on, we're not selling anything of value. All we're doing is saying they should have the title. We've only ever had the title because you couldn't put the title in an unincorporated charity, because it doesn't exist except in the Charity Commission's imagination, whereas a CIO is a legal body, like a company.
So, in these days when voluntary effort is not as extensive as it once was, I want to do the best we can not to antagonise in this situation. If we can help push them in the direction we'd like to, then I think that's what we'll do. But if we've got good people running something, then I hesitate to disturb that.
I should perhaps say then, in the context of what you just said then, John, that the Village Hall Management Committee has had its ups and downs over the years I've known it. It had the crack of firm management when we had one of our members chairing it. Yvonne will remember well. That came to an end, but the committee has often been kind of quite casual. And Mike Apps as chairman has actually tightened it up a lot, so that when I go to the AGM, we now get a proper little leaflet printed out to say, you know, this is the AGM for this year, this is the agenda, this is the accounts and what have you, much more orderly than it used to be. That's not to say that I don't fully agree with you and other people here that they should be going to a CIO, but in terms of him and probably Sam as well, getting a better grip of the key part of the AGM, what they do in their committee meetings, of course I've never been to because I'm not a member of the committee, but the AGMs have been better.
Yeah, well that's encouraging. Additional horse warning sign update, we were looking for a quotation I think.
Yes, I wrote nothing and I have written again and still nothing.
And that's to KCC?
Yes.
Yeah.
To Kieran, who was dealing with it.
KCC is on a dead halt at the minute, I think.
Yes.
Kent Men of the Trees competition?
Yes, remember at the last meeting, you were going to...
I was going to look, I've been trying to hide under the table because I said I'd talked to Mary Mallet and I haven't and I forgot to. And I'm sorry, I'm probably too late now, aren't I?
Yes. However, I also contacted our tree warden and he couldn't think of anything that we got that would be what they were looking for, but he said he'd have a think about it. So what I suggested to him was that we carry on thinking about it. And as this was a new thing, to see how it went, if it was successful and they do it again next year, then we could be ready.
Yes.
Because we just didn't have the time. It was 30th of June, so we just didn't have the time to put anything together. But I thought if we could think about it, sort
I
of
will
within...
remember to ask Mary Mallet
Yes.
on Sunday.
But, you know, just so that, and then see whether it's successful. I don't know, to wait and see.
This was to find a single specimen tree that would compete with others.
Exactly.
Yes, that had history to it.
Yeah.
That sort of
Preferably where somebody had been hung or something like that. Yeah.
Yes.
Why not?
Hanged.
Yes.
Sorry. What's one in?
Okay. Planning application.
Can I suggest that at this point, I think you're here for the planning application.
I am, yes.
Yes.
Could we
Yes.
and then
Okay,
so that
we
she
go
can say
public.
something. Yes, we adjourn the meeting now, so
Okay.
as you've missed the public session.
Yeah.
So if we'll adjourn now, then you can have your say.
Oh, right,
Okay.
right. You'll ask me questions. I haven't got a clue what you want to know, but here I am, and I'm very happy to answer any questions you want.
No, I
Tell
think
me a bit about
we've all had most of us will have had a look, I think, at the application. And I mean, I was fascinated by the heritage statement, I must say, which, you know, that's a very historic grouping, isn't it?
She's wonderful. Yes, she's been in our home and as well, and she's great and very, very thorough. Yeah, I would say.
Yeah. Well, it made excellent reading, not just about your planning application, but the history of the site and. All
Well,
that.
yes, it was.
It was about the first.
a lot as well, I must
Yes.
admit. Yeah.
The court. It was about the oldest house here, really, isn't it? Or the oldest site in the Wittersham.
I think yes. I think so. Yes.
But would any councillor like to comment? I don't think any of us feel that there should be any reason to object.
Yeah, I mean, do you want me to talk now, or do you
Yeah,
want to adjourn or something?
Well,
We have. That's
Oh,
why-
you have?
Yes,
It's
yes,
just
yes.
adjourned. Okay,
Yes.
sorry.
So that's why you're talking.
What's the CIO? That's what I want to know. You were talking about a CIO, and I thought, well, I'm trying to concentrate, but I don't know what you were talking about.
well, it's a community interest,
Charitable
Charitable.
incorporated organisation.
Okay, all right.
but it's
Got it.
designed for.
It's where a charity can basically get incorporated and enjoy the same protection as a limited company, so that the trustees of the charity are not liable for
I see,
the debts
okay.
in the way that a limited company, the directors are.
Yeah.
So when you've got an unincorporated charity, if it goes pear-shaped, the individual trustees are joint and severally liable, so their assets can be at risk.
Okay. Right, well, I've bitten a bit more now.
And it has nothing to do
All right,
with
well,
your
I'll
house.
stand up to you. I feel a bit weird sitting back there. But I'll tell you a bit about me and my family that might help,
Sure.
so you know
Yeah.
a bit more about it. We've been here, I think, God, it's nearly 4 years now. And the people before who we bought it from, they never ever lived in the house. And it was just rented at the farmhouse, whatever you want. It had just been rented out. So we saw it, and it looked a bit sad, and it just had no love or any character to it, particularly at all. And so I lived there, and then my daughter and her partner and their 2 babies, they lived there too. I spend a lot of time in India, but because I have 3 children and 2 of them have businesses in India, so we're all coming and going. At the moment I've got one of the daughters from India over here, my son's still in India, so it's a house for all our family, and we're like a sort of, not quite a commune, but I mean that's how it is, because I thought it was nice to do that. And the reason that when we first got there, I had to have a really horrid operation on my ankle and have my ankle fused to my foot, and was told that I wouldn't be able to walk that well. And that, I thought, oh God, this house, it's all on all levels all the time, and what am I going to get? And my kids were thinking ahead, and they said, oh, Mum, perhaps better to, And I said, I'm perfectly all right, thank you very much. I'm sure I can be going upstairs, which indeed I sort of can, but that was the thinking behind trying to get something, to be thinking ahead in case I wouldn't be going up the stairs all the time. And so that put that in our head. And also someone completely by chance banged on the door, we didn't know them at all, and they came with this painting that they'd found in some old antique shop or something somewhere around, and they said, is this your house? And I said, well, yes, but what's that? And it was the corner of a barn, and all around, and if you looked at the thing, it says, I think, it was all farm buildings all around there, and exactly where we want to build something, if we ever get the money together, was this enormous barn. And I had no idea it was there until this person turned up with this painting which showed a corner of it. Oh my God. So then we did some sort of asking around, and then some more pictures were found of what used to be there, and I think it was all mostly pulled down late 60s or something like that, maybe early 70s. So, and all the footprint is still there, the bricks are, you can trip up over it as you're walking around. All the footprint of it is still there. And when I had Rob Pollard from RX Architects come and look at where, if we were able to do this, where would the best place to try and put it, or could we reconfigure the house, but this didn't, more difficult. And he said that's the best place because you've got the footprint, and there was an enormous building there. So that's what you should do. And I liked the idea that it was going to be, that it's modern, but with the feeling, with all the wood and the flat roof and the cedar roof and everything that we do, it will fit into the, overlooking the very duckweedy lake and everything. If anyone knows how to get rid of duckweed, I'd be thrilled, because I row up and down trying to get rid of it. So that's really us, a story about my family, and God, you know, there's 2 tiny ones. Who knows how many more there'll be? I don't know. But it's we love the house. We love the history of the land, and what they call the moat is very, very. I mean, it needs a lot of attention. It really does. But whether Historic England will let us try and do anything there, I don't know. It should be a moat, but it isn't. It's getting more and more trees falling in, and you know, we try and get them out as much as we can, but everything needs attention. I'd love to be able to put it all back to how it should be, but I think that will cost us an awful lot of money. But that is our plan, really. And our plan was to build something for me, so that not all day long I'm looking after the grandchildren or doing things like that. I can have my own little space when I get inundated with all the family, who I love very much. But I think that's it. If anyone's got any questions, I'm very happy to, you know, or show anyone anything.
Can you tell us your name?
Oh yeah, my name's Heather.
And surname?
Right.
Right.
I'm Heather Wright. We all got different surnames. Very confusing. Yeah, I've always been Heather Wright, and my kids, all their surnames are Gex, because that was the name of their father. And then there's Sam, and his partner, who's a Wilkinson. But I thought, for the planning application, I thought, God, it's going to be so complicated. I just put my name on it. Otherwise, I'd have who's this lot. So it's me, but we all own the house. All of us, family.
And have the planners made any difficulties for you? I mean,
The planners, no, not at all. They've been great. I mean, it's they did it a few years ago now, and it's only recently that I thought, well, we must try and get on with this. And I know that if it does get passed or approved, I mean, we won't be able to do it straight away. We've got to get out all the funds together. But I thought it's worth trying.
sure.
So that's what we want to try and do, and I think will be in exactly the same place as the barn, but nothing like the size of the barn. It was enormous. It was bigger than the house. So one story and overlooking the duckweed, and I might have got rid of it by then with any luck. We'll see.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank
Very
you. Nice to
interesting.
see you all, to meet you, and
Yeah.
say hi, and
Sure.
good luck with the rest of it. So, okay. Hi, and Yvonne, thank you for contacting me and everything. Okay.
Okay, so we now reconvene the meeting, and we discuss that particular application, and I imagine that nobody's got any particular objection to supporting that application.
It is, of course, as Heather says, it is, of course, a moat, because she's gone. It's not a lake. She called it a lake and then a moat, but it is, of course, a moat. And I was going to tell her that there isn't any clever way of getting rid of duckweed apart from standing there with a net and many hours and hours fishing it out. But anyway, she's gone.
Well, there are lots of theories, aren't there? There's barley straw.
That's no good for duckweed.
Is it not?
No.
Then there's the fish, the carp.
Well, ducks eat it.
Yeah.
And the fish, yeah.
My next door neighbour had the same problem, but with a smaller amount of water, which was covered in duckweed, and her solution was to basically invite the ducks in. So
Yes.
she's got about 120 ducks
Yes, that's a good way of
coming
doing
every
it.
day.
But they make an awful mess, you know.
But she's also got running water now.
That's
So
good.
there's a fountain that keeps circulating, and the duckweed's gone.
Yeah.
But you have to have a relationship with 120 ducks
Yeah.
and feed them every day. But, no, I've got nothing.
No,
It's very interesting indeed. I wish her well.
Mm.
Nothing to add.
I wanted
I
to
agree.
reread the heritage statement,
Yeah.
but I've tried several times and I've done it before, and it won't let me re-access it.
Right, she actually sent it to me, so I will forward her
Would you mind? That would be kind of you think.
But that's interesting because Jeremy and I have had difficulty accessing.
Well, I tried yesterday and I've tried now, but it won't let, it denies me access.
But it's the whole Ashford planning site went pear-shaped weeks ago, and they put up comments saying they know and they're fixing it and all the rest of it. It's still useless.
Yeah.
It's got broken links all over the place. If you do any search and it comes up with anything useful, you then click on that and it says, well, doesn't go anywhere. It says use the interactive map. You go to the interactive map, it gives you the number, you click on it. On their site, broken link. Search for Ashford planning, broken link. Search for Ashford planning applications. Don't know what you're talking about. It'll give you a whole load of answers that have nothing to do with planning applications.
Mine
The
kept
whole
coming
thing
up,
is
click
screwed.
this if your page doesn't refresh.
Yeah.
And it didn't. I clicked that and then nothing happened.
I'll go straight into
I
it.
thought I was having a
Well,
nervous breakdown, but
I
it's
don't
not. It's
know
everybody.
what
It's
I went
hopeless.
straight in, but on the
Yeah,
laptop it was...
It's the laptop with the problem. Isn't
Yeah.
it? My laptop.
That's fine.
And my iPad's different, so it was still working.
I have
My
managed on
phone
the iPad,
got
but not
on to
today.
okay. But anyway,
I
that's
suggested to
unanimous.
Yvonne that she should complain bitterly because they are obliged for us to be able to look at these applications. We're a statutory consultee. They used to send them out on paper. They stopped doing it because they said they're available online, and they're now not available online. And yet they will claim that we've been consulted.
So we must rattle the sabre.
Well, what
Yeah, I
I'll do
think so.
is
They've had plenty of time. It's worse than Marks and Spencer's.
the
Is it a Marks and Spencer's issue?
No.
I know it's not been hacked. It's just the slowness.
No, yeah.
the planning officer is the one that I get on well with and is very helpful. So I will go straight to her and see what she
Sure.
comes back with.
Quite like.
She's the one that we got an extension on this.
I
There's
think
another occasion to say all councillors are very worked up.
I think there's a general view which applies in Ashford as well as by people like me that Ashford IT is.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if some of the new councillors and things, are not really fully cognizant of the way it works and probably have been
Yeah, but it's
a bit
last.
destructive.
Last year they were elected.
Right.
2 years ago nearly. It's 2 years now, isn't it?
It should be the officers anyhow who
Of course,
are
yeah.
handling it, not the members.
Anyway, that's unanimous support for that application. Tree survey quote, we've had the quote which seemed not unreasonable, and it's the gentleman who we've used before.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
so,
I got the same quote as 4 years ago.
yeah. So can we confirm that we're all happy to accept the
Yeah.
quote? and get on
Yes,
with it?
sure.
Okay, now the heavy stuff. To review the standing orders, it was my responsibility to read through all this stuff, which I have indeed done, and I was very impressed, I have to say. The standing orders were reviewed in 2023 and approved. Whether there were any changes before that, Jeremy would know, but
There were, I went through and took a few bits out that we are entitled to. There's some you can't touch, there's some you can.
yeah.
The other thing to bear in mind with the standing orders is we do have a sort of indulgence put somewhere near the beginning, which we've had since I joined the council, which said that we most of the time don't follow them, we proceed by consensus. But this is the fallback. If we have the situation where some councils get into huge arguments between councillors, then the standing orders and the code of conduct, not in our case, our code of conduct is a stripped down one. But the standing orders can become very important to control the arguments between councillors. But as long as we don't have that, standing orders, we basically say no, we just proceed by consensus. We don't have this sort of who wants to make, have an amendment, has it been proposed, has it been seconded, okay, any other amendments, then you do them all in reverse order and all the rest of it. That's all in here. There's no way we do that.
No.
We just drive ourselves mad. But you can fall back on it if you have to.
Yes, and they're very comprehensive, very clear, cover all events, as you say.
And it's essentially Malek's words, except where I've ended them slightly or taken bits out.
Yes, yes. So some of you may well have gone through the same exercise, but much to my surprise in a way, and congratulations to Jeremy and any others who reviewed them before. I think they're excellent. And can we therefore say that we have now reviewed them now?
Mm.
Yeah, well, you
Yes.
Yep.
and others are happy.
Well done you for going through them.
They said.
Where's your folder, Alan? Where's your folder?
Okay.
Financial regs, again, we're not so controlled, Jeremy, I believe that's right. These could be adapted to the way we do things.
This is a different situation.
Yeah.
Right the way through the FinRegs as they are here, and Appendix 1 or Appendix A, the two versions of the delegations, they are all my own words. They're nothing to do with the NALC ones, which are just attached as an appendix. We took advice which said you can do what you like, so we've done what we like. We still have to follow other legislative things that Yvonne knows about, and that obviously is in the range of her bookkeeping and things. There's one area that we ought to look at though, because the new draft FinRegs came out and had the bit on procurement, which Yvonne has drawn our attention to. I don't think it will bite us very readily because it's a £30,000 limit. The only thing that you could catch is that the rule says, and it's something that used to apply in Europe, they've said it in Britain always, oh, you can't split contracts up to avoid the limit.
Yes.
The wording is to avoid the limit.
Limit.
You can certainly split contracts up because you have them with different contractors, for instance, but you mustn't say, oh, well, we're actually at 35,000, so we'll give one for 10 and another one for 15, and, you know, you can't do that. But I think somewhere in here, Yvonne should now find a suitable place to say that there are, whatever they're called, procurement regulations that will apply, because they're mandatory, they're legal.
Surely. Well, I'm sure we can accept that.
And then also in paragraph 6 of the preamble, I said the current model as issued is 11 pages long, and of course that may not be the same anymore. That might just be changing, but basically you're there.
As evidence,
If everyone's
Jeremy,
happy.
that I beside that particular paragraph, I
Perfect.
query update.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. But I think if Yvonne puts that thing in about the procurement regs somewhere,
Yes.
then we're covered.
Are we happy to confirm that
Yes.
we've now been reviewed and we're happy with
And I did read them again today, and I thought it was a
Yeah.
brilliant job.
Yeah, no.
Well,
I second.
yes, we support.
And I wouldn't be able to do it now.
We've now got to look at the procedure for co-opting councillors to fill vacancies. Now, this was last reviewed in 2016. I do have a number of mainly grammatical type notes to. I was just going to push those through to Yvonne to look at, you know, whether you put parish council with caps all the way through.
Sure.
Small things of that nature. I couldn't see anything particular of substance that needs changing. Whether people are happy on that score themselves.
I did read this one again today. As far as I know, that is still basically what we would do on the odd occasion when we do co-op. Lately, you see, we've not had to co-op very much. We've done a little bit, but not much, because people have carried on at elections. There was a time when we were losing councillors left, right and centre.
Yes, yeah.
They intend to stick around these days.
It's better. It's better. People know what they're
Such
doing.
a lovely job.
So, what I would suggest is that we consider them reviewed, as I say, subject to one or two changes in the text, not in the meaning, but and I will now hand over my copy to Yvonne. Hopefully you can see what I mean by those things. and subject to that, can we agree that we've now reviewed that particular
Yes. Yeah.
item?
I will mark on the bottom of them all, like I have with all the others, when they've been reviewed and amended, or no change.
May I make a request? I'm trying to reduce the amount of paperwork I have at home, and I realise looking through my folder that something's a bit out of date. You have all of these documents on your system. I'd be really grateful at some stage for a digital copy, so I can keep it all on my system rather than in the folder.
Yeah,
because
because you asked for an update since then, and I did them all for
I know. I'm to be perfectly honest, I'm a little bit confused about what I've got, not what you've got.
Not half as confused, not half as confused as I am, so could I have the same?
Well, if we all have a bang up-to-date digital copy, if we then want to print it out, that's up to individual councils. I'd like to keep it on my system.
Colin's on board with that one too.
Thank you. Thanks, Ian.
So, the last one that we're currently doing is our approach to risk, its mitigation and control. Also,
safeguarding.
Safeguarding, sorry. Safeguarding. This,
Did you get a reply from Jennifer?
yes, we did.
You did.
And she'd been very helpful.
I didn't.
Well, I did just to. She originally thought there was a copy hanging up in the church, which there isn't, apparently. So I'll fill you in on that. But I think slightly overriding that is the AI produced specific parish council specific document that Yvonne circulated, I think. And to be honest, I think that's probably the best way to go. It reads very well. It presumably is right up to date, and it's designed for parish councils. So I thought on those grounds we should adopt that, and it should replace that with the one adopted in 2017, which again I had some issues with on the grammar side, but only is we have to have a name.
Yes, and that's what I was going to say, we do need, it talks about it up here as well, the responsibilities. The council will appoint a designated safeguarding lead.
And is George Parkin?
He was a councillor at the time.
He was.
Yes.
And that's someone within the parish council.
Yes, it was a
He was a
councillor.
councillor.
Yeah, no, but the safeguarding
Should be a parish
parish
council.
council safeguarding.
Can it be the parish clerk, or does it have to be the council?
Thanks, Alan.
Yeah.
I think whoever it is, they need to have up-to-date safeguarding training.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Which obviously I have had with walking, because I have to have that with
Right.
walking, but whether that's...
Well, I have had it as church warden.
Yeah.
Well, there's
Oh, there you go.
There you go. You can have co-safeguarding officers.
Yes.
Problem solved.
Unless,
Half of you two.
unless there's anyone.
I'm absolutely not the expert here on safeguarding, and I mean that genuinely. I really am not into safeguarding at all. I didn't get the time to read through the whole AI thing. I know it came through, but I didn't read it through. But in keeping with a lot of these things, this is more where I regard myself as more of an expert. And it's especially true, I think, in the moral panic, which safeguarding has become for the last 15 or 20
It fills
years.
us all with a heavy.
The danger is, and I think the AI one is doing it, is to exaggerate the scope right at the beginning. And this one does it a bit as well. We've got to think of that we shouldn't be volunteering for the guardhouse, as my old Navy colleague used to say. We should think of what the parish council is, what it does, what it could be, what it should be, and not start off right at the beginning saying, oh yeah, safeguarding, top priority, it's the thing that we have to do for everything in the village, anywhere in the village, oh, the community, we've got to safeguard it, and all the rest of it. It is bonkers. We aren't going to. We can't, even if we wanted to. We should be making the scope clear, in my view, as to exactly what we can and should. I'm not suggesting in any way that we shouldn't safeguard on any occasion when there is a need or an opportunity. But this idea that we are casting a great safeguarding umbrella over the 6 square miles of Wittersham is crazy. We're not, and we can't, and we won't. And so starting off with that kind of, it's like politicians do all the time. They're always going to prevent this ever happening again when we all know damn well it's going to happen next week. It's just the way it is, and we shouldn't actually be doing all this grandiloquent
I agree with you, Jeremy, and I read it
We've got to
slightly.
be careful.
Well, I read it slightly differently. I thought to me, it was referring to the activities that we oversee. In other words, if we're having a meeting in here, right, we need to make, and then I can't remember the occasion, but if there are children present, you know, we have to take steps to make sure that they're safeguarded.
Yeah.
If there are vulnerable adults, and vulnerability is one of those things that is a really grey area, but I don't see the parish council being responsible for safeguarding in the parish. I mean, that's.
It was the opening approach that
it's very much
down to
it's
detail.
very much what we, you know, and that's where the risk comes in. We just have to anticipate what's the risk, you know. If we did have a child that came in here, are our loos child safe, for example? You know, if they slipped up and cracked their head open and what have you, is the fabric of the building, if we're responsible for that, I don't know. Maybe that's another thing for the
That's
village
health
hall.
and safety then.
But the point is, if you know, safeguarding in in a church building, for example, is to make sure that vulnerable adults and children are protected, that they're not exposed to danger, and that's all we can do. Keep it really simple.
And now, the 2 points I would make. One is that, unfortunately, society being what it is, we pay so much attention to it and we get so worked up about it and we look at it so accurately that it probably actually just makes those who would wish to breach safeguarding rules more devious, because they learn how to be devious from studying the text. I think that does happen.
Yeah.
Looking at this particular committee, I think one area where we probably are at fault is that we quite often leave Yvonne to clear up on her own late in the evening.
And she's vulnerable.
Well, it's
I think we're quite good at helping to clear up.
we help to clear up, and then everybody goes, and then Yvonne having left to tidy up and lock up herself.
Would you like 2 birds in men?
Well, look,
Stand
Alan,
beside
that's
you.
an interesting. Alan raises an interesting point, but that's a lone worker issue, and the lone worker issue that we have big time is Alf. Alf, and we've always had to accept. And I think when I did a risk assessment initially, which I think is still around somewhere, we just have to acknowledge that he's a lone worker, and if he falls off his ladder, as he has done, then that's how it is. We do not have
None of
two
that comes under the
caretakers
umbrella of
together.
abuse.
No.
Abuse is if a child discloses something to you whilst they're in...
So we're looking at protecting children now, and that's obviously a big issue. isn't it?
Or even adults.
And you know, there aren't that many children come to parish council or indeed to church.
Right.
Yeah,
That's
no,
why I
unless
think,
we need a policy.
well, that's why I think the church one is a good starter template. But you two are the experts.
No, that's
You've had a training.
I hate, you know, I've watched a video of the Bishop of Lewis abusing young men in choirs and stuff, and you know, for about 3 hours. And, you know, and that is the training you go through. You know?
Was it a documentary?
Well, it's
It sounds like a home video.
yeah, that's the sort of thing you have
I
to
think
do.
we keep it as simple as we can, just recognise, as you said, that the areas of abuse, health and safety, and no disrespect, falling off a ladder is not so much the safeguarding area. It's
That was the
very-
lone worker.
The lone worker point is a thing that is very often the case in charities where you've got limited resources, and that's about people making sure they don't put themselves in vulnerable situations. So, for example, you know, if you have a single woman managing a homeless shelter in a rough area, we wouldn't have that. But I think the point is right, actually. You know, we cheerfully say to Yvonne, is there anything we can do, etc. And she cheerfully always says, Not pretty cheerfully. No, that's fine. I've got it all. So we all wander off into the night. If something ever happened, and don't want to give you bad dreams here, if something ever happened, we'd be at fault, in my view.
I mean, the classic lone worker issue in our society is general practice. Because the number of times you're basically a lone worker, male or female, late at night, is, I mean, how we all got away with it.
But is that what anyone's supposed to mean by safeguarding? I thought safeguarding was, what Sally said, it was children who are being, let's say, abused in the broadest sense, and groomed, of course, and vulnerable adults who can also be, for instance, not abused probably, but
they can be.
They can be, but they can also, let's say, be taken advantage of in ways that are not proper.
A lot of what this does, you need to look at it as it dovetailing together. So, for example, we could have someone coming to a parish council meeting who had learning difficulties as an adult, and if somebody in the public session had a go at them, okay, and name called or told them they were an idiot or were verbally abusive, then that falls within that, and we would have a duty of care as a parish council, led by our safeguarding officer, to say to the person, shut up, stop it, or we're evicting you. And we need to have.
Well, indeed, Kevin was possibly an example of that, because I wasn't here, but some of our councillors were at risk of being verbally abused, and that. I think Jeremy asked him to leave, and that was fine.
Yes, that's fine.
No, I said that if he didn't, I would.
Yes.
But I think
And
we're writing down something that we all know and falls into the category of normal behaviour for reasonable adults. Nonetheless, as a parish council, we obviously need to conform, don't we? And so I would suggest that the AI model is used, but perhaps we can look at it again, and particularly those.
Have we had that even? Yeah.
Just lately.
Just make any comments that you feel would make it tighter as far as Wittersham itself is concerned. I'll give you this. This is the old document, but there are one or two things in it, like references to county council phone numbers that obviously the AI policy might need, and they might still be active. Then we've got the risk mitigation and control, reviewed June 2023. I've got some comments on. There was an interesting word, paragraph 4, second to last line, making itself more performant on behalf of the community. Not one I particularly recognise, but interesting.
It's a word that's used. Whether it's a good word, I can't tell you. I just ape other people.
Surely. I suggested active as an alternative.
I don't think active was what we were after. I think it was the ability to perform its duties is being implied.
Okay, just suggestions, and there's one or two other things.
On the
then
second,
item 11, the money market deposit.
I forgot that
is
as
not
well.
yet visible.
It might be by now. They were doing it when I wrote this. They said that was something they were trying to get into place.
Sure.
Do you know any more about that, Yvonne? Have you seen anything come through about it? I think it would be useful then if Yvonne endeavoured to find out whether it is visible at the time of this writing, and if it is, find out how we can all log in to see it.
Again, you could use this if you like.
Because that is a decent control. And then in 12, we're no longer underwritten by a major UK insurance company, we're underwritten by Ecclesiastical. But I did look up Ecclesiastical today. I did it before, and it's sort of in one ear out the other. Ecclesiastical, interestingly, is owned by an international group, which is a charity. and it donates its profits. Ecclesiastical's own website, which is what I was looking at, it's not quite true. It talks about the work ensuring churches, obviously, and then it's got a bit on groups, and it does mention, if you go through them, that it's got this new deal with our brokers, who are now called something I've forgotten, Clear Councils. They only established it last year, I think, and we're quite that's where all the policies are going now, and they've said that that's something they really want to grow.
Well, it seems if they've got a large parent company, then
I don't know how, previously it was Aviva. We don't know how big they are. I didn't find any figures on them. But they are a group of various things, including ecclesiastical, and as I say, owned by a not-for-profit.
Sure.
They call themselves charity. Called Benefice or Beneficial or something like that. Benny something or other.
Right. Correspondence. Calm now have formally requested that tree should be planted in memory of Derek Harmon, who many of you will know. I didn't, but he clearly was a well-known figure within the village, and I think a lot of people would be very happy to see a memorial tree planted. The actual planting involves some liaison with us, does it? And
well, I think they say
they've thought of a place for it, haven't
maintained by the Wednesday Readers Gardening Group, so shouldn't cause any additional work for anyone else.
they? Yeah, and the actual placing, just planted in the memorial garden.
Yes, we probably have a discussion with them and Alf as to where it should go.
I think that's right.
They talk about a flowering cherry, which is what we had, which we already have a flowering cherry.
One day we'll have a forest up there.
That's what.
When we're all dead and have a tree in memory of each of us.
Well, that's the national policy, isn't it? Reforestation.
Yeah, but then no.
So
Well, of
can
course,
I take it?
pruners don't live that long. That's the other problem. So they've got perhaps a 30-year lifespan.
See us out.
See you out.
Yeah. So we're all in agreement that
Yes.
that should be done. Good. Cults Local Government Reorganisation Survey. Now, Jeremy was kind enough to secularise his notes on this particular topic, and hopefully you will have read them. Jeremy, would you like?
All right. Some bits I think, it's up to councillors obviously, some bits I was probably a bit liverish about. I think that the overall way in which the government was going about the reform compared to when they did unitaries 25 or 30 years, no more than that, 30 years ago they were doing them when I was doing bins. And it was done on a much more methodical base with a commission and a public consultation, and they spent years on it. This is a bull in a china shop approach. So I'm not hugely impressed with what's going on, and that you can read in some of the answers. Do you want me to spin through them? The first bit's dead easy. Number 4, by the way, why can't we have power of competence? It's simply a legal matter. Yvonne isn't Silka qualified and doesn't wish to be, and that stops us having power of general competence. Just on this point, and looking ahead, and of course we're not likely to have the reform for another 2 or 3 years, 3 years if it happens. I think the writing is potentially on the wall. It's the way people's minds are heading, that the parish is going to need to do more than it did, and that's going to lead us in 2 directions, or two points, just to have our mind on for the future, not now, not next week, which is, firstly, we're probably going to need more clerking, and secondly, we are going to have Silka qualification. Simply because without it, we will always be struggling over our powers and all the rest of it. So this is a distance away. But you know, I just think that it is going to become an issue, but it's not an issue at this minute. Local government awards scheme, accreditation, I've never looked into that. I know it happens. It's something that Nelk's terribly excited by. We don't have it. The staff is obviously straightforward. Would we take on more staff for reorganisation? I've said don't know. Depends on the reorganisation. But if we're expected to do more, Yvonne would be the first one to say, yeah, we'd have to. We've got the services there. The engagement with residents, I think we're pretty good. I mean, they don't necessarily engage with us very much, but we've got a reasonable run of doing things. And I think one of our big things is council availability, because people know us and they talk to us. Well, some of them do. I don't think we need any calc support directly for that. Familiarity, well, I'm as familiar with it as anyone else is probably. I've gone to the things and listened to them. I think calc just is a matter of representation and briefing us on the facts, but at the minute, facts are in short supply. Neither Kent nor Ashford are really engaging with us, except for that big meeting I went to where Noel, the leader of Ashford, was there, and he was fine. But what's Ashford doing? We don't know. Does Johnny know? Possibly, but he hasn't told us yet. What's Kent doing? Heaven knows. They are in a state of torpor because none of the councillors have any experience, almost. Opportunities for the community from devolution and how to be involved. Well, funnily enough, we're back to the caretaker scheme. I mean, we've been doing it for years. It's about to wrap up. I've said devolution might lead to a review of that. I think it'll be a bit lumpy. I think we'll be out of the business and then Ashford will get reorganised into something much bigger. And then they'll be saying, how can we organise this with parishes? But that's where we are. It's just a mess. Because this is only going to calc. You know, it's not going to Ashford. Opportunities from reorganisation. Let me just stress, and it's important for all of us to have in our mind, and other people are stressing it, the government is doing two things at the same time, devolution and reorganisation. Reorganisation is saying, let's get rid of Kent and put everyone into 3 or 4 unitaries covering historic Kent and Medway. That's the reorganisation. Devolution is that the government wants to devolve to a new mayoral authority. So if all goes according to Andrew's plan, there will be a new mayor of Kent, elected by the people of Kent and Medway. That person, and they say at the minute, that will be the only elected post. They will then have a staff that they appoint, a bit like the PCC does. He gets elected and appoints a staff. The mayor will almost certainly become the PCC, among his other duties, just like in London, just like in Manchester. That mayor will then have power devolved. And he'll have to work, he or she, obviously it could be a she, will have to work with the new unitaries at doing Kent-wide things. You could look at it as throwing it all up in the air and reshuffling it so that at the minute a whole load of things in Kent, let's assume Medway's part of Kent, that complicates it. Let's assume it's all in one. A whole load of things in Kent are done once, in Kent. That's it. A whole load of things are done 13 times in Kent. 12 districts or boroughs and Medway. What they're saying is let's shuffle that round so we will do some things once in the mayor. Not a lot of the ones that were in Kent before, we'll push them into the unitaries, but we'll pull some down from government. And an example, I think, is likely to be that the new Kent mayor may very well be given certain power, I'm just saying this, certain powers over the bit of Great British Rail that happens to run in Kent, which doesn't happen at the minute. I mean, KCC can which all they like, but they've got no powers over Kent Railways, not as far as I know. So there will be some things coming from government to the mayor, some things that have gone from will stay with the mayor, that used to be KCC, but a whole load of KCC will go into the unitaries. Big question there is social services. Social services being done once or twice if you count Medway, going to 4 times is inefficient. Going to cost more, and it already costs most of all the money. Noel Ovenden said that they are talking about putting a plan to government that excludes social services as well as. So I presume what they mean is let's have a social services authority for Kent, and let's have unitaries, and let's have a mayor. And maybe the mayor oversees this, I don't know, but I mean, all of this is huge. I mean, they've got to do this by 30th of November. They've got to put their proposals in, one from every district. It's got to be one from Ashford, one from Tunbridge, one from Tunbridge Wells, all using the same data but giving their own ideas. And then some poor mutt in the ministry has got to read all this lot and try and work out what to do in no time flat. Okay, on we go.
Can I make a quick comment? What struck me is that we're no longer in the first wave.
Indeed, but we're only just behind it.
No, but the first wave has got to happen, and there will inevitably be lessons learned and changes made.
One hopes.
Yes.
Well, it will be. I mean, if through history, ever since the Romans came, mind you, they got straight roads and they weren't falling apart, so maybe that's not a good analogy. The other thing that struck me was that going back quite a few years, we were very much at the forefront in Kent with our caretaker scheme. We were the pioneers, and we were recognised as such, and we stepped up to the plate and said, we'll do that. And we really drove that agenda. And I don't know how one does it, but it strikes me that one of the things that parish councils need to try and think about is not to just wait to be told what they're going to get, but they need to be proactive. And I think what we need to do as a parish council is have our shopping list thought out before 2, 3, 4 years or whatever, which is like, we want that bit of land back, for example. All the things that have been on our to-do list that we've been frustrated by either Ashford Borough Council or KCC, it might be a long list, it might be 4 or 5 key things in the village that we want. So rather than just wait, and we might need a campaign for that, or the future councils might need a campaign. But I think what we can do now is we can either just wait and see what happens, or we can say, as we try and do anyhow month by month, what are the priorities for the benefit of people in the village, and we start sort of building a small shopping list of whether we end up in 3 unitary authorities, 4 unitary, 5 unitary, whether the mayor, at the end of the day, we are the custodians delivering the services here, locally in the village. And I just think all we can do is to try and put our heads together and say these are still the priorities for people in the village, and use the model of the caretakers.
There was debate.
That's what I thought it was worth.
There was an interesting point. There was debate on that at the Calc EGM I went to that was about this subject.
Yeah.
You've got the note.
I read through them.
There were 2 versions. One was from Vince Maple, the Labour leader of Medway, and he said the time to be putting your nose up for what you want out of this is as soon as the shadow unitary councils have been elected. And that will be in 6, I think. In other words, less than a year.
Yeah, next spring.
Other people were saying that they thought that was a problem because those councillors will then be so much taken up with their own interests and their own affairs and their own concerns that they're not really going to have the bandwidth to talk to a whole load of parishes. And frankly, there's not an answer to that, but it is the point you raise. At the minute, anything we raise is just going into the void because there's no one actually there to kind of react because they don't know any better than we do.
Well, sometimes that's an opportune moment to step forward, not to try and solve everything, but to cherry pick and just sort of think, what's the 1 or 2 things that we could be the model for Kent, as we did with the caretaker thing, and put forward. Because what will happen is when that shadow, whatever it is, elected subsequently, they'll be looking for answers, they'll be looking for solutions to all the problems.
Sure.
And if we can say, even in a small way, hello, this is Wittersham again. We've rallied around and led once. We're happy to do it again.
Sure.
It's worth a crack. I think. Anyhow,
I had something to add later than this actual questionnaire, and I can still do that, and you'll find that ties in a little bit as well with an idea I had, because we're on the same ballpark really. Concerns about, so that's reorganisation, I think basically a reduction in service quality and accessibility with worse communications, I think is almost a given, unfortunately. What engagement so far from district or county? Well, they came to that meeting I went to, that's about it. The preference for 3 or 4, I don't know what you think, my preference is definitely for 4. 3 is just too damn big. They do say they want unitaries to all be 500,000 people or more, and Kent has got about 1.9 with Medway, 1.9 million, so there's not enough people for 4, but the government has since said, oh, it's not a minimum, it's a sort of a rough idea. So 4 does fit, depending on how you do it. They're starting to get bashed back a bit, I think, by other people. Where am I? Alignment with current district boundary or otherwise, I'm just not sure. And this is another point I came up with the other day, which I'll get to. When forming new unitary boundaries, do existing boundaries work well for us? Well, I felt initially, yeah, we're Ashford, we're right on the boundary of Kent. They're not going to break the boundary of Kent, so, aren't we going to be automatically left where we are? But then I started thinking about it. I don't think there's any historic link with Ashford. I think we're in Ashford because we're in Ashford. It's the nearest big town, unless you count Hastings is probably slightly further away, and of course they're in Sussex. But traditionally we were Tenterden. We were closely aligned to Tenterden as a borough and as a Cinque Port and as part of the RDC which we came in. Historic Weald of Kent goes from the Isle of Oxney to Tunbridge and Tunbridge Wells. And it doesn't go east to Ashford, so I think there's more in common westwards. And interestingly, if you look at the old RDC up till 1974, and you look at Mike Hill's division when he was the county councillor, I think I'm right in saying the only difference is hold on. It's basically the same. So, and I'll come back to that shortly. What should new unitaries set out on? Well, I think if they could improve on KCC delivery performance, which wouldn't be difficult, improve on communications and access to responsible officers. For KCC, that should be easier. That's the whole reason for breaking it up and making it unitaries. It'll be worse for the things we did with Ashford. Ashford may be a nuisance, unitaries would tend to be worse. Unless, of course, they start having local offices, for instance. But I don't know. It is being said that we should have named, I think I've seen this, that we should have named people. I think the government had suggested that somewhere, or maybe it was just Nalk aiming for it. That parishes should have someone they can go to. And we used to have that with Michelle Byrne, who was very good, but she retired. We don't have it anymore. So parish liaison officer and certainly attendance at CALC area committee meetings. What we don't know is what CALC is going to do. That's another thing. Are we going to have a CALC Ashford committee when Ashford doesn't exist? It's part of one 3 times the size? Maybe, maybe not. The problem is, if we had a CALC committee for the new unitary, there would be about 100 parishes there, or 75 or something. It's too many. Challenges, I think just being too large, covering too much space. We're a big county. Too much population, too many villages, 300 parishes in Kent. Assets, well, of course, the open space is something that we're interested in, as Paul was hinting before, including the village green. Ashford Borough Council housing is all over this parish, and I take that as being something we have no interest in at all. It's just not feasible, and why would we? But if you're talking about assets, that's the main asset they've got here. Are they ACV? No, but of course Village Green is like an ACV double plus. What external support is needed? I think potentially financial assistance and administrative support in the long run might be needed, and to take on new responsibilities, and the GPC is the general power of competence, which I think will be necessary. What are the main barriers? Lack of staff capacity is plain. What training would benefit? We've no idea. There is a tendency sometimes to think all we need to do is have a training session and everyone will know what they're doing. The difficulty is, firstly, they've got to go to it, secondly, they've got to internalise it and then remember it. Additional comments, I just think that KCC no longer provides reliable services. These changes are likely to make things worse. Not because they're not well intentioned, but just that it's the disturbance, it's the confusion, and it's all of that. I don't think they should be contemplating it. This is additional comments until they've got a comprehensive and workable plan. Like what I think they're doing is having a deadline, crossed fingers, and heading off into the the blue yonder. We know that national mergers and reorganisations rarely work well. Now, do you want me, John, to go on from there into my other thoughts on this area, because it is further down on 15 as well. Run it in, okay. I think that's good. I had a chat with Debbie Baines, who's the clerk in Tenterden, the other day on the phone, with two thoughts. One was to say, and I think it would be fair to say that she wasn't particularly enthused with either. I mean, she's the clerk, obviously a clerk with a number of staff, but in a way it's a councillor thing, but I don't have access to the councillors anymore. I don't see them at CALP typically. The one who I used to know best, I think, has dropped out, or is taking the back seat. What I suggested to her, which she said she'd raise at their next meeting, of they've got a working party looking at this. I assume they'll be further ahead than us. I said, do you think that there's an opportunity here to re-establish a loose relationship of what used to be Tenterden RDC? Because if all the parishes are going to be expected to take on more, then some kind of group, a bit like our caretaker cluster if you like, but in a different sense, some kind of get-together, like I used to go to it. Mike Hill occasionally would have a get-together, 2 or 3 times I went to it, in the Tenterden Town Hall, to get all the parish chairmen together to talk about what was going on. Obviously to give himself a bit of visibility and, and support and encouragement, but it was a way of saying, okay, guys, have we got the same problems and all the rest of it? And I can imagine that Tenterden, by being by far the larger authority of any of us in that group, because the big ones in Ashford, apart from Tenterden, are outside it. They're Kingsnorth and they're Great Chart. They're not within this boundary. But within this boundary, we could do with some, I don't know what you want to call it, well, it's going to be support. You might say a bit of mentoring. You may say expertise sometimes. And there might be a benefit of a sort of, what is it? It's a sort of little, it's more than a mini calc, but it could enable us to all function if we're getting stuff thrown at us and we don't all have to learn it separately. We can. So that was a thought I put to her. And the other one that I put to her was more radical. We've been told that we can suggest that we feel we're in the wrong area, the wrong district. The key here is Faversham, and that was brought up at the EGM. Faversham looks east to Canterbury, but they're actually in Swale. And they don't like being in Swale, and they never ever did. And I thought, looking at Weald of Kent and all the other things and the Tenterden, there's a case for saying that arguably we have more in common with Tunbridge Wells. Bearing in mind Tunbridge Wells won't exist, it'll go into a bigger one. But in a lot of ways, I think of the AONB. The AONB doesn't go to Ashford, it goes westwards. into Sussex actually, a lot of it,
Yeah.
but it goes into Tunbridge Wells and up to Tunbridge Wells boundary. So maybe we should be agitating for that, but we're not in a position to agitate for it unless Tenterden was doing the same, because we can't be orphaned. Tenterden, I mean, you've only got to go just to the other side of Tenterden and you're into Benenden, and
That's
Benenden is Tunbridge Wells. It is quite close. The difficulty then is that if it's all done by wards, and this is just me thinking, if it's all done by wards, and most local government things go by wards more than parishes, the data is often ward based. As soon as you go for the ward, you go right out to Carnarvonton. And Carnarvonton is getting further and further away from Tunbridge Wells, so it's probably a pretty long shot, but who knows. There is a little extra to that, which is that a number of people, and it was mentioned at the conference, are anxious about different levels of economic sustainability, if you like, and economic deprivation. And somewhere, I've got stuff here, I can just give it to you. You don't need to study it. I just did a few copies. There's one over there. Basically, what you'll find is that all the councils are there. And what I did, I got the data on their council tax bands, and they're in alphabetical order across the bottom. And the left-hand band is the A, and the right-hand band is the H. And at the minute, social services, which is the big cost, is balanced out across the whole of Kent. Okay, Kent just charges a certain amount of council tax, and if you're an A or a D or a G, anywhere you pay that amount. But once you split social services down into new unitaries, that unitary has got to pay for its social services, which will be population-based and deprivation-based. Yeah. Just take the population bit. If you are Sevenoaks and you've got the biggest percentage of band G and H and hardly any A's and B's, you're going to get loads of money in, therefore you don't have to have a big council tax. If you're in the opposite end, like Margate, Thanet, then you find, okay, they've got so many A's, B's and C's, the sheer population-based costs are going to hit their council tax hard. When you add deprivation, which tends particularly to be around East Kent, you get hit double. And as a lady said at the conference, and she said 4 will be a problem, 3 would be awful. 3 unitaries. Her joke at the time, the best joke of the day, was she said we're going to be split into West Kent, North Kent and Poor Kent. And there's truth in that. That's another reason for saying if we could move westwards to Tunbridge Wells, which will almost certainly be with Tunbridge and Sevenoaks, all for the better. I don't think we'll manage it, but it's a thought. And I did put that to Tenterden to think about. She said it hadn't been raised by them. So I'll go off that now. In terms of the actual choices, I've only got this once. These maps here, they're not the ones I did originally. These were put in by some of the boroughs who've done a paper already. Doesn't include Ashford. It was Tunbridge and Malling and Sevenoaks and about 3 others. And they offered 4 choices, 1 with 3 and 3 with 4. And they are actually the maps, and the numbers I've written in red are the number of thousands of people in each of them and the percentage of the total in Kent in each of them, and I can just pass them round. If they don't split up existing districts, so if each district goes into a unitary intact, then you never get a very even split. It's just not possible. How even should it be? Does it matter? You know, we're certainly going to get different size ones, and some fit better than others. But then the other point to bear in mind is that you don't really want a long, thin one, because all you're going to do is make people go further distances for everything. if we assume, for instance, the planning department is in one place, and they will have to be driving up and down to where they go and look at their houses, for instance. Or the housing officers, unless they get outposted. You know, Kent is a big place, and it's not very well served by roads. You've only got the A2 and A20 going east-west, nothing else much. If we get put in with the east and it goes up to Margate from here, it's a long way. It's a slow way. So, I think that's about all I need to say on that.
Thanks very much.
If people are
useful to
happy or
explain.
unhappy with those answers, and if Yvonne can perhaps tidy them up with John to whatever you want to say and get that in, we've got another week or so, haven't we? Sometime in July.
Yeah.
The fact is that we can only speculate. You know, that leaves room for endless conversation about what might or might not happen.
Indeed.
So we very much look forward to getting word back from the councils for whom this is becoming a reality already. For examples of what may happen in Kent, but our problem no doubt is made even worse by the fact that we have a brand new council and councillors with very little experience in anything, and they're not likely to be terribly cooperative with the current.
There was, I think I put it in the note just briefly, there was a comment from Harry Rayner at the EGM. Harry is now the leader of the Tory group in Kent, but it's because it's a very tiny group. But he was quite senior before. He used to be deputy portfolio holder for finance. And he reckoned that if the new Reform leadership in Kent, who don't wish their power to be stopped a year early, which is what will happen if it all goes through to time, they want their 4 years rather than 3. For instance, if they dug their heels in, he feels they could actually derail it. It will not be possible for it to carry on if Kent actually say we ain't cooperating. Now, what happens after that, I don't know. It may be that they'll just say, well, look, we might be able to get the Mayor of Kent out of this, let's go with it. But I don't know.
Okay, well thank you very much for taking an interest in that area and bringing us right up to date and as far as you can. Okay, item 12C. This is an email from the owner, I think, is it not, of the old corner house, who's anxious about the manner in which his planning application has been treated so far. And it was a question really of whether we could offer him some support. Is that right, Yvonne?
Yes.
I mean, I'm not sure that we can do much more than we have in that we've supported his application.
I emailed Johnny just to say, had he been approached on it? I haven't had an answer yet.
Yes, because that's when I replied.
Yes, indeed. You recommended it.
Yeah.
My own view was that reading the letter, I didn't go through all the drawings, but reading the letter, I thought he made some perfectly reasonable points. And unfortunately, the listing people seem usually to be completely obdurate about anything that's reasonable. But I'm fearful that we're in danger of having a hugely iconic building in the middle of the village just fall into disrepair, which of course they're entitled to do. If they're not entitled to take a partition out and let it, they're entitled to just leave it until it falls down.
Am I right in saying that the other correspondent is this charity that I mentioned? I can't remember the exact name now. If you look at the planning application and comments, it's a Society for Preservation of
Ancient buildings.
Yeah, and the points they make there are made very much through their lens.
Yeah.
And what worried me is this is an independent external body viewing, so I don't know if they've even been to view the property.
Sure.
Whereas the heritage officers, or whatever they're called, would often get involved. I mean, when Roger Kimber wanted to have a change of the internal door and that palaver. They don't seem to be involved. And I was under the impression that Ashford had access to that sort of expertise.
We're supposed to have.
Yeah. And it seems that the only commentary has come from this independent, small external charity that says basically you can't change a doorknob in there without getting in triplicate and looking at the
Their
provenance.
status as far, I mean, they'll claim status as experts, but it's a bit like Weald of Kent, going in and saying what they think about a planning application.
The classic parallel that was interesting that we had the owner of Palstray Court in here today was the interior of Palstray Court, which was all funny little corridors and partitions, and it was designed internally in the days when you had a small electric fire. You had tiny rooms because you had to try and heat that. And they applied to Ashford Borough Council to have all the partitions taken out. And the planning office came along and said, you can't do any of this. It's heritage stuff. You can't take any of these partitions out. And so and this was the previous owners. So they went away, and then of course they did it all anyway. And the planning officers came along and said, oh dear, oh never mind.
Well, the point about this, that's a good point, but the point about this is that right now you couldn't put people into the property because it's not safe.
No.
So the proposal from the owner is to take whatever remedial action to make it safe so that people can live in it.
Exactly.
So if he doesn't do that, then it becomes uninhabitable and sooner or later it just collapse. And it's not
heated apart from anything else.
Well, it'll degrade, and we've said we back it. It seemed to me. I really looked at the comments and what have you. I thought we took a really reasonable view that was all around preserving an old building in the village, because they're not asking to do anything external, are they?
No.
It's all internal, so that it's safe and people can actually live in it.
Get worked up about internals.
They do, and they're not old internals. It's just whatever was done 50 years ago.
No, it's Palstray. I mean, they just get worked up about internals.
They just seem to feel, well, it's the old joke in the environmental world between conservation and preservation.
Sure. Well, to be absolutely honest, it's really his argument with the planning department and not something I think that we can go further into, but just provide sympathetic support.
And we pointed it to Johnny, so
exactly.
we done of it.
Yeah.
Ashford may finish up with an appeal, and then it's going to cost them money and delay.
CCIA notice of changes.
Yes, did forward that.
Yeah.
Can you remind me what they were?
Nothing to argue with there. I
What
don't
were they? Was it just administrative?
Yes, basically.
Okay, right.
Okay, noted and accepted. Right, clerk's expenses, March to June.
Yes.
We've seen that. Looks fine.
Yeah.
I've seen
All good.
Anyone arguing with that? No.
Good.
Okay, approved.
Yes.
Thank you.
Working party reports. Caretaker, well, we pretty much rehearsed that situation. Alf, anything? Very sorry, you're not part of this conversation.
I would just like to say that if anybody's walked past the War Memorial and Coronation,
Yes.
Yep.
Good job.
Memorial Garden looks really,
Yes.
really nice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely agree. Finance monthly transactions statements. Yvonne
And you should have all
has
seen those.
circulated.
Yeah, sorry it was late, but I posted only came this morning with the bank statement from Lloyd's.
Yes. So
That's the new one.
here we have it. Pretty much the usual items. Nothing special we want to draw our attention to.
And of course the national insurance is
Yes.
we paid before.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing.
Okay. So you're like
Yes, please.
so.
Okay.
Okay.
Caretaker one.
Caretaker.
Yeah, that's that one, and then we come on to what's next on the list.
So,
Caretaker budget.
caretaker budgets, yes, this was circulated separately. And we've already discussed the deficit that we are hoping to eradicate. But you can all see the items involved.
Sally wanted to talk about things.
Yes, Sally had a point to make.
I mean, if we look at Canardington, the new annual figure is 1,260. What's the difference of 825? I don't understand what that is.
The difference between
We're going
column,
back to-
the old figure and the annual new figure. So Ashford are not prepared to pay us what they currently are. In that case, they're taking 825 away
Right.
based on their own estimate of what is required, which is just finger in the air stuff, really. These figures don't necessarily bear much relation to the real value
Right.
of the work.
They're saying that the wish takes 2 hours to cut or whatever, and they're prepared to pay £1,080 for
It's
that. Yeah?
interesting that you should
Right.
draw attention to that one, because we had a meeting this afternoon with Alf, and that's an example of something that they've got completely wrong in terms of the amount of work required. But the bottom line is the issue that they're actually going to deduct money from a figure that still isn't anywhere near enough, and will just add to the budget deficit that we're currently looking at. So hopefully, at least the matter will be resolved within the next 3 months, one way or another.
Can I just ask, under Wittersham, Outcap's the cemetery, but that's not on the list.
No, but it's not Ashford because we own the
Oh, I
cemetery,
see.
it's ours.
Oh, I see. Just Ashford's figures, yeah.
Yeah, it's just the areas we do for Ashford.
And the time per visit, that's what Ashford say it takes,
Well, it's
not
only
what
the-
Alf says.
It's
Yes.
it's what I've worked out, because on the last one that they gave us for Property Farm Field, they worked it out as £45 an hour. So I was able to go back and work out what they were working over the all
Right.
the cuts. Not what they've said, it's just what I worked out. That's why I haven't done it for hedge cutting, because I don't know whether that's what they're talking about for hedge cutting. This was just sort of game mowing.
And Stone Church, that's the cemetery, isn't it?
No, it's the church. They've got part. It's the area all the way around the church.
Which
They've
is
got-
their cemetery, isn't it?
No, they've got an extension cemetery, which is actually what Robert Budan does. They've got an extra bit, which we don't do, but it's around the church, which is the churchyard rather than a cemetery.
Right, okay.
Any other queries at all on? Okay, so we have to agree.
We do just one thing. Obviously, I have put in a figure for the caretaker salary, which we haven't actually agreed yet. Because that comes at the end of when we have to get rid of the
Caretaker.
Yes.
So just bear that in mind when you're happy with it.
So, okay, we are happy.
Yep. Yes.
Right.
And then I just put on to note that the dates were given for the notice of the public rights to view the accounts, and the dates for that, because that's sort of one of these things that with the annual return, I have to put it, it's on the website, I put it on the notice boards, it doesn't actually have to go on the notice boards, but I'm not sure how many people actually look at those, but possibly more than maybe even look at the website. So I've also minuted it as well, that's there, because that's one of their big things they like to make a big point of, that the public have a right
You get
to
any,
inspect.
you do occasionally get people who
I
want
got
to.
it once when we had the problem over the planning application for the village hall and ventilation building. That was the only time I was ever asked.
Mhm.
But yes, I was,
Okay,
but not since.
right. No planning decisions received.
Nothing
No.
to check today.
No, good. Open spaces, any comments from anybody? No. Public rights of way, nothing to raise.
That some of the, I haven't checked all the paths that we asked to be reinstated, but we have had some of them.
Good. Highways,
This is where I would quite like to update you on.
You go first.
If you remember, we had Jonathan Strong's complaint
Yes.
about road
Yeah.
signs, and I got that full letter back from this chap, Ashley, whatever his name is, explaining why
Yes,
the
potholes.
was. Well, no, it was about road closure signs and how they
Oh,
stay
yes,
there
yeah.
and they should, and they put them up before they start work and all this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we've now got the occasion which they closed the road into Tenterden, which a lot of you have picked up on South East Water. When I came in this morning, there is a sign by where the Peace and Plenty was, as you leave the A20268 onto the B282, it says road closed ahead. Now, it says access only, but it doesn't say where the access is. They've got a diversion sign taking you down through Peace Marsh, obviously. Well, I went straight back to this chap and said, this is a prime example of the problem we have.
Yeah.
You are saying that there's a road closed, it's 10 miles away.
Yeah.
There are 2 or 3 villages in between. So you're going to get people that are going to Iden, which should go, oh, I've got to go that way.
Mm.
And where do they end up? In through Tenterden and then get stuck and can't get through. So I pointed that out today. And I got an email from, where are we? Yes, it's Ashley chap. I would note in my previous emails when referring to road ahead closed signs beginning at the diversion route, this is another example that explains why those signs are there. These are immediate works and therefore our team have not been consulted on the traffic management plan before it has been installed. I can understand why they have put the road ahead closed sign at the junction with the A268 because this is where the diversion route begins. Understandably, it doesn't explain where the road is closed, but that is because we have not been given the ability to request this signage from the utility company or their contractor due to them submitting this as an immediate permit. The best thing for us in the case of these emergencies is to apply pressure to the utility company to get the works completed and off the road. And then there's an email sent to the South East Water. Do you have any update with this closure, please? i.e., is it on track to finish in time? It might be worth getting this inspected with Stephen to pick up any additional issues. Regarding vehicles driving through, it would be good to know, because I said that I picked up on next door that people were going through, signs have been taken away. Regarding vehicles driving through, it would be good to know if the site was live at the time. We do not want vehicles driving past a road closed sign, as this is a traffic offence for good reason. If it was due to the TM being late prior to the work starting, then I would want this confirmed so I can raise it with South East Water Direct. And then South East Water came back to both of us. Good afternoon, these were emergency works that went out yesterday. The signage was taken to site around 7 AM but the road was not actually closed until 4:30 in the afternoon. Works had begun, however. It was found that they needed to do a shut of the water in order to carry out the repairs. This is taking place this afternoon and they are hoping to get the repair completed, backfilled and reinstated soon after. The permit is in place until the 10th of July. However, they are trying to get the backfill and reinstatement plan for tomorrow. We have not received paperwork for the notice to these works. However, I would always advise people to check Network. This is a tool available to the public which does display the location of the closure. And once we receive the paperwork, we will display the diversion route that is in place. With short emergency closures like these, there is often not enough time to produce site-specific boards indicating the exact location of the closure. So I went back and said, thank you for the clarification, both. Unfortunately, not everyone uses Network before a journey, especially when you use the route on a regular basis, and it is most disconcerting not to know where the road is actually closed. Do you attempt to go down the road? I've done my usual bit.
There's a bit of a flaw in that, because when the signs went up, I checked immediately Network. There was nothing there.
No,
The only thing was up
Yeah.
by the cricket ground,
Yes.
which was traffic lights. So
Yes.
I'm afraid he's wrong, fundamentally. The other thing that's a bit of a clue here is about poor communication. So these big vehicles called buses, they got the message. You could see them going down Wittersham Road to Rolvenden Lane, double deckers.
Yes.
So how do they get their information so they don't all go jolly down to Small High and then get stuck because they wouldn't be able to turn around? Someone is giving them, the bus company, the advance warning of all of this. So I'm sorry, they're completely out of kilter. They're not putting it on one site at all. And the signs went out 24 hours, in fact 36 hours before the work started, because we had comments on Nextdoor, people saying, oh, don't worry, it's not actually happening, I've been down, I've come back. And then poor Angie goes down and finds that, the road's completely blocked, and what have you. So he's just
no,
not...
it was her. It was her that said, the last one I read out was her again. But he came back,
No, I meant Angie Pratt.
Oh, sorry,
She put on Nextdoor that, but having been told it's not by people, she got down, and then people were, then Karen White said you can drive a small car around, and I mean, it's just, unfortunately, it's just a misinformation. And if they had their act together, if they told us when they told the bus company, that'd be hugely helpful. And my suggestion is connected with that. We said we reach out to Wayne, what's his name? Chapman, as his passion is highways and potholes. And we haven't got a meeting to September, but I think we need to invite him to come and tell us his plan for road works, road signage and potholes. Give him, invite him. By then he should have done a little bit of homework and found out what is going on. Because it's causing people a loss of time. People aren't going to get to appointments at the surgery. I mean, the knock-on effects of all of this.
I know, that's why I went straight away.
Yeah, but they're not giving you the truth.
The last bit, he came back after I said that. We completely understand the frustration of road users and the position they are put in when trying to navigate around temporary works. This is why it is important to raise these issues so we can see where improvements are required. We will raise this as a discussion point with South East Water.
Oh, that's good then.
You couldn't go beyond their ability.
Can I also, sorry, just one point about the fact that it might seem a jolly jape to pick up the signs and throw them in the hedge for after collect at a later date, but we should remind the general populace that they are actually committing a criminal offence, and if they fall foul, get a fine.
They just seem to have disappeared this time though. They're not in a hedge that I saw.
Well,
they've
somebody will have
disappeared.
Yeah, well, someone will have stolen them. It might seem a jolly funny idea, but people need to be reminded of the consequences.
I think it doesn't carry much water for them to say emergency. There's no time. I mean, all you need is a metallic temporary strip on, even if you write it on yourself, saying at so and so. And job done. I mean, when you come down the M25 and you see a sign saying says A21 closed at. Actually, sometimes it says a road number, which you don't necessarily know where it is, but
They do have this. I mean, when there was that major road works through Bindon, so if you were going to Headcorn Station, they had those electronic signs up. They got them at Leeds Castle, you know. I mean, the technology exists and the digital technology is there, and they're relying on stuff that they were using, I don't know, pre-war. I'm talking about probably the Boer War.
well, our hope is that we might
Invite Wayne.
Well, he reckons he was coming to the
You said-
September meeting. Yeah, because I contacted him and said it'd be nice to meet, and he said his diary was very full until that.
Yes, he apologised for not being able to attend our July and August meetings.
Yes,
Oh, right.
which he hadn't been invited to.
Maybe we should put apologies in our minutes for Wayne.
Yes.
But,
For the August.
anyway, okay, that's highways. Cemetery, churchyard, same old thing.
Well, only
Vote
next.
for biodiversity.
Yes, we're waiting for that, and this map that I couldn't produce. She said, can't you find somebody that does? So I've had word with Greg, and he very kindly said he would. And she suggested that perhaps he got in touch with her instead of coming via me all the time,
Sure.
which I gave him her details, but I haven't heard any more.
Okay. Jeremy's already effectively
Done all that, yeah.
reported on the AGM calc. Our next meeting is scheduled for the 9th of September. I get to hang around to chair that one. I would otherwise have been travelling, but so I will travel after it instead. So that's that. Items for information. So there's just one thing that's sort of public news. Do we record the Cult Community Award for Jane and Julia? Is it appropriate?
Normally, because I
Okay.
suppose they haven't actually said. Yes, I do.
Okay. They were delighted to receive it. Some of you were there, I think, on the occasion. Fine. Well, Alf, if you wouldn't mind.
No
Well,
problem.
we've got to resolve first. We've got to resolve to do it.
See you later.
Okay.
I have a couple of points of information as well before we do that.
Right, a couple more points.
While I was at the EGM, I mentioned to you, John, I sat down with Terry Mortimer, who is the legal director at Ashford. We was having a cup of coffee because they got there very early to the hotel. And I, en passant, mentioned our troubles trying to get an answer on the village green. And he said, shouldn't be a problem. I said, well, we have been told that everything is stopped because of this, that and the other, and they couldn't do it. And he said, I don't see why not. I mean, obviously they'll always say the lawyers are holding it up, and he's the chief lawyer. He said there is a policy on asset transfers. I said, I never found it on the website. He said, well, it may not be there. He said, but there is one. And he said, obviously it's got to be decided on its merits or words to that effect. And we did also hear later in the EGM that Dartford has been talking to their auditors, external auditors, and the external auditors have warned them, whoever they are, that they will look very carefully at asset transfers to make sure there's no fiddling going on in effect. We'll get this off to so-and-so, before it all gets merged in. But that's not an issue with the village green, which is worth nothing to anybody. So he said that as far as he was concerned, no reason not to be addressing it.
Well, what if I speak to this, when I meet this Phil Arden, this the estate
Absolutely.
manager,
He's the property manager. Yeah.
can bring it up?
Tell him, I don't know if you're going to have anyone else with you as well, but whoever it is, or you, the Director of Legal has said there's no reason I can't address it, in his view. The other thing I was going to raise was just for you to be aware of it. I don't think I've given you an email. I had a bright idea, when I have bright ideas, bad idea. I had a bright idea a couple of weeks ago after seeing a letter in the paper about whether it would be an advantage to us. We often say that we have difficulty with all the different disparate groups around the village, whether people will do things and they don't seem to kind of quite gel and whatever. For instance, e.g., we have difficulty getting a fete together now. And when I say we have difficulty, it doesn't get itself together ever since Mervyn stopped doing it. And, you know, this sort of thing applies elsewhere. And I thought there may be an opportunity and an advantage, but it would depend on how the groups responded to it. There's no one size fits all. To have a community support body or something, we'd have to come up with a name for it, for Wittersham, probably I would think sensibly set out as a CIO, you know, arranged as a CIO. It could take money from us a bit. It could raise money from other places. Paul always tells us there's plenty of money around for community initiatives. And it could then support all of these bodies in ways that suit them. They're all part of the club. Instead of all just being individuals, they're all part of the Wittersham community, and they can work together, they can put ideas together, they can have a single website which has got them all on it. I sent to John, which he was very impressed by, a thing that I found just in the last couple of days from a parish in Somerset in the Quantock Hills, same size as we are, and it's got a huge thing on their online, not on their website necessarily, telling you everything about everything that goes on in the village. All the activities, a description of each of them, who they all are. I mean, we've got a list of names. They've got about 10 pages of it. And it's just that the initiatives aren't coming together. People do a lot of work in the village in different ways. You know, I've got a list here of 19 organisations. Some of them don't actually exist at the minute, but we'd like them to. Most of them do. And it's just an idea to say, can we build some coherence into it? Because if all this reorganisation goes on and we get asked to do more, we need the community to do more. And it would depend on whether people played the game, whether it gelled, whether they found it useful, how they... I mean, if everyone says, I don't want anything to do with anybody else in the village because I do it my own way, then we are where we are. But I'm just trying to... Alan.
Can I just... Well, that's very helpful, Jeremy. Just throwing into the mix a little bit, I mean, the church is in a fundraising mode because it needs, basically has got any money. And there are a couple of things. There is a Christmas tree festival going to be at the beginning of December, and I was going to approach each of the local societies. Is it possible you could let me have that list of societies?
They don't all exist. Like, I mean, there is a youth club on the list, but we don't have a youth club. But yes, that was the ones that I just thought. That was just what I thought of.
Thank you. And I mean, if anybody wants, I mean, you don't have to be a society to have a Christmas tree at the Christmas tree festival. No. If a household can do it, or a group of households, or a street, or a section of the village could apply to have their own Christmas tree, which they would then decorate, and they might or might not win the competition.
Sure.
That's that. And then also, because we are very short of money, there's going to be a dog show. So all those who have dogs, please put something in, I don't know the date yet, in the spring. You'll be able to bring your dog to the dog show. You know. And there'll be obedience classes for dogs and probably for owners as well. And things like that. And
Roma can bring you along.
And I think I think we could join with a cake competition. So it's all, I mean, it's all village work, it's all village stuff, isn't it? You know, and I mean, anyway, so there you are. Sorry, that's just...
I said about us not having the fete, and we don't anymore since 15 years ago. But we did, of course, have the 2 May Day events.
Yes.
And they were both drawn together by Judy, who is very good at getting around twisting arms. No Judy, no May Day, you know. And again, I just think there's an opportunity to try and draw people together a bit more. Maybe that they even have a get-together occasionally between all the people who are doing all the activities.
And you've left quite a lot of organisations and activities off this list that I can think of.
Well, please, yeah, add them, yeah.
I mean, there's all sorts of other
It's
things.
just what I thought of when I was sitting down
Yeah.
typing.
I mean, I could add in things like the Wittersham Tennis Group and
Yeah.
the Wittersham Bridge 4 and the well, there are all sorts of other
I'm
things
sure
as
there
well.
will be.
You know, the book clubs, various book clubs.
Book clubs, yes. What was I going to say? I've got that in mind again. Oh yes, I talked to Greg, who we all know here, because he and Kate did the garden, or Kate more than Greg. They thought it was a great idea. I was endeavouring to talk to Mervyn at the sports club about it, but he got distracted with someone else who wanted to talk to him. But I had Mike Bartlett on the other side, who does work with the Tenterden Chamber, and he listened to it and he thought it was a great idea. That again, it's, you know, he has the history. Do some of you remember when there was the Wittersham or Isle of Oxen Business Forum? He was involved in that, which was a John Rivers initiative, and he's very much of the mind again. Like what did I call it? Chamber of Commerce. What does the Chamber of Commerce do most of the time? Just pulls the people together to say, oh, I had a go at that, and did you know you could use so-and-so? And it's just a thought. And there is the opportunity, I mean, you know more about it, Paul, but if it's a CIO, then it means, I'm not suggesting that it would be ours, it would be independent and it would have trustees, but we're able to give money to it a little bit, just to help it get going, and then they are able, if they do go around trying to get money, it's charitable for anybody else.
Yeah, I mean, Jeremy, I don't disagree with anything you said. I think it's admirable. It reminds me actually of the work Colin and I did several years ago with the blueprint for the future of Wittersham.
Yeah.
And we all came up with that before your time. We came up with
The vision.
the vision of Wittersham. Unfortunately, more recently with the situation that John led that kindly on the pub, and we had 70 people said jolly good idea, and then when we asked people to step forward, the room was bare. You know, and so I think it's about the principle of, what we're talking about is a wider principle of engaging people in the business. There's a whole raft of the next generation that we don't know. You know, if I was to ask you all to name 10 households where the parents in the household were under 35, we would all struggle to come up with 10 different names. It's fact. But there are a lot of people now that have moved into the village. I think the connection with the school is something that, well, I know that Giles and Graham and so on were trying to get the music and get the kids more involved in the music in church. That's one way of building the bridges. I think to me, the one thing that stands out, what you said there, is a village fete. On next door, we've just been advised that the Iden fete is next weekend or the weekend after that. Yeah. And that sort of heart and soul bit has gone. Whether we'll ever get the cricket club to talk to the football club or not, maybe that's a little bit like living on the edge of Gaza or something. But I think the principle of having something like that, but you've got to have a core group. You've got to have someone to lead it. And everyone has to point to the parish council.
In years gone by, these mutual interest groups would self-start around one or two individuals who maybe had more spare time than people do today, but it just doesn't happen now. And again, I revert to my favourite topic, the Swan. If only we can get a pub going again, and people will mingle more, and there'll be much more of a feeling that.
What's that big jar on the pub bar top which says annual fete or fireworks? There was always a huge jar on the Swan for annual fireworks. So it's that.
You put your change into it or something.
Yeah. It was there, and with Ray beaming smile saying, "Is that it? Is that all you've got? Come on, coffer." But you're right. The tradition, the Swan or equivalent, would be very much at the centre of it. To be fair, we've had some initiatives that have in their themselves worked well. For example, Miriam's Scarecrow.
Yeah. Scarecrow.
She did a good job there. And the Christmas lights. I know that Andy
Sparkle.
Sparkle was
Sparkle, Sparkle.
he's someone who Sparkle the Sparkle and some of the things that the church is looking to expand, not as just a place of Sunday worship, but as a village asset.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, there have been 2 or 3 people in the football, throwing the cricket side, took me aside after the scarecrow thing. What's the parish council thinking about proving that sort of thing? You know, I mean, so exactly the conflicts you're looking at is still very much to the fore.
There are probably people who think that scarecrows stand in the middle of fields, but there you go. That's a different era.
Well, Jeremy, this is, it's a very good idea of yours. If any of us come across somebody who we think might be suitable to start driving that forward.
And I will keep talking to people when I get the chance.
Yeah, well, you talk to a lot of people, hopefully there might be somebody, but
One way actually of kick-starting is you're right. Not that we're hugely flush, but I've recently done quite a lot of work with a community organisation in Newham, in South East London, very poor area, and we've just put in a new chief executive there. But one of the things they do is they look at all the things they have to do as a community centre and then realise they can't do them all. So what they do is they identify a small, not even a charity, almost like a couple of people who do this or that play group, what have you, and they are not just a recipient of funding from all sorts of different, but they also give small grants out, 100 quid there, 200 quid there, so little seed money, and that's worked really well because it's helped people take the idea and have a go. So I'm not suggesting that we take Alan's dog show experience away from him, but if there might be people who thought it was a good idea and they needed some bunting or I don't know, and they needed 50 quid or 100 quid, so we could find a way, I don't know how, but almost encouraging, trying to sort of tap up and see if we can get just 2 or 3 organisations that want to take it through to a pilot stage or a test stage and say, hey, we're willing to support that up to £50 or £70. We'll provide the coffee and biscuits or something, I don't know, or the bunting or something small like that.
Yeah.
Just to get it going.
Well, while it lasts, I'm not on there anymore, not running calc, but Ashford Borough Council, unless they've cut it again, they give out £75,000 a year to voluntary groups. And I used to sit on the panel giving the amounts out.
And there's the members' grants.
And there's members' grants as well.
okay,
Good.
let's go. Now,
Sorry,
we've got to revert.
yes, we need to go back to the agenda. We
Yes.
missed out the first quarter's budget statement that I did forward to you. I know it's not in your preferred form, but I don't have it basically. But it does show you the budget and what we've actually spent.
It's all straightforward. I know what you mean about the form, but it does come straight off the computer, which is fine.
Sure. So nothing particularly unusual
No.
to draw our attention to or anything like that. Okay, can I sign this? Everybody?
Everybody happy?
Yep.
Thank you. And
Sorry
then
about that.
we've got the issue of the caretakers.
Yes, which I need to have a proposer and secretaries to evict.
Okay,
I propose that.
this is a 2%.
Hang on.
No, it's the resolution.
Hang on.
To exclude the public. Any hiding beneath the table.
Right.
Right,
please.
hang on please. Jeremy, and did I have a second?
Yeah.
Thank you. Right, so I just need to,
It needs